In today's video, I want to talk to you guys about trees. Yeah, trees. Not trees laying in the water, but trees actually growing outside of the water and how they affect you as a bass angler and how they can help you to catch more fish. So many people, I think, go through the motions of fishing every single day and they catch fish around trees and they don't even realize why they're actually catching fish around those trees. And so in today's video, I want to give you guys 3 examples and 3 tips about fishing trees that'll make you realize, like, wow, the tree is way more of a factor in bass fishing than I ever thought it was. So number 1 is going to be the root bases. So a lot of trees, especially stuff like cypress trees, if you guys are lucky enough to live around a lake that has those standing cypress trees in them, a bald cypress is a great example of one. They have these giant underwater root bases, and those root bases create a perfect environment and a perfect habitat for fish to live in. Because not only do the predatory fish like the bass and muskies and other predatory fish like that live around those root bases and use those root bases as ambush points and as homes, but so do the bluegills, the baitfish, and the crawdads. That is just a perfect little kind of almost microbiome at the base of those trees and on those root bases for those fish to live around and to live in, just because they have everything that they need. They've got shade, they've got cover, they've got ambush points, and then the food comes to them because the same things that attract the bass to those root bases attract the food to those root bases as well. And so if you live and fish on a lake that has trees actually in it, like those cypress trees or any other aquatic based tree, remember those trees are going to hold fish because those root bases are the perfect environment for those fish to live in. The second one is going to actually be trees that don't even grow in the water. These are trees that grow outside of the water but near the water. And it's trees that produce sap. One of my absolute favorite trees that produces sap and or produces pollen and produces flowers that pollinators get around is a mimosa. Now, a mimosa tree has these beautiful pink flowers that come out on it. It's one of my favorite trees. It was my dad's favorite tree, my great-grandmother's favorite tree. It's my favorite tree because they just smell awesome. They're absolutely beautiful, really cool trees, and they always grow near the water. And the thing about it is not only does a mimosa produce a sap that gets into the water, but they also produce those flowers that pollinate, that attract pollinators. They attract flies, they attract bees, they attract little flying insects that come to eat the pollen, come to use the pollen, and come to eat the sap. And all of those little bugs that get attracted to that tree, eventually some of those start falling into the water, and those bugs falling into the water attract things like bluegills and baitfish, which ultimately attracts the bass. And I cannot tell you guys how many times that I've been working down a bank and I'll hit a bank that has a big mimosa on or has another big, fruit bearing or flowering tree that produces pollen, produces sap, flip in there and catch a fish. And ultimately it's because that tree unto itself, again, is creating like a little micro environment. It's the perfect little environment for a fish to want to live because the tree creates shade, the tree drops food into the water, the bluegills come to eat the food, and then ultimately the bass come to eat the bluegills, and it's just an awesome little food web that this tree is producing. And then the last one is going to be one that you guys might not think about right off the bat because it's not an all year thing, but it's a certain time of year thing, and that's around certain types of bug hatches, and specifically mayfly hatches. Mayflies use trees because mayflies actually come out of the water. So a mayfly's larval state happens in the water. They float to the top, they hatch out, and they turn into a mayfly. And then those mayflies leave the water and they fly up and they hang on the trees around water, and they stay near water for their entire life cycle because they actually lay their eggs back in the water. And when the mayfly hatch happens, those mayflies use those trees, and then just like with our mimosa tree where you've got a bunch of bugs in the limbs, eventually some of those mayflies are going to hit the water, the bluegills are going to show up, the bass are going to show up, and the bass will not only eat the mayflies, but they'll also eat the bluegills that are eating the mayflies, and vice versa. And so it's one of those things to keep in mind that if you've got certain kinds of bug hatches around you, if you've got certain kinds of trees that attract bugs, and if you've got trees that are actually in the water, they create these little micro environments for fish to use and for fish to feed around and off of. Keep it in mind, fish it, because that's where the fish are going to live. And if you guys want to see me actually fishing a mayfly hatch around a bunch of trees near the water that are absolutely covered in mayflies, click this video, it's popping up right here.